What if everything you were taught about African spirituality was wrong? Not just incomplete, completely erased, distorted, and repackaged to serve someone else's story. For centuries, the spiritual systems of the African continent have been pushed into shadows, labeled as primitive, demonized, and often forgotten. But beneath that silence lies one of the most profound and intricately woven tapestries of sacred knowledge the world has ever known. Alive, breathing, and still whispering to those who listen. African spirituality is not a single belief, but a universe of wisdom systems, rooted in nature, ancestors, community, and the unseen forces that shape our reality. It's not about temples or scriptures, but about living in rhythm with the earth, the sky, and the spirits in between. Across thousands of cultures, from the Yoruba in Nigeria to the Akan in Ghana to the Zulu in South Africa, these spiritual traditions have guided lives, healed wounds, and defined destinies. And yet, for many of us, this ancestral legacy has been buried under centuries of colonization, conversion, and cultural erasure. But here's the truth: these systems were never lost. They were hidden in plain sight. In the drums that still echo through the Caribbean, in the rituals quietly passed down in whispers, in the dreams of elders and the pulse of diasporic memory. This is a journey not just into history, but into our bones, our roots, our collective soul. To understand African spirituality is to reclaim a truth that colonial powers tried to burn but never could. It is to walk a sacred path back to wholeness. This exploration isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about reconnecting to something deeply human and deeply divine. It's about acknowledging the wisdom of those who came before us, whose spirits still walk beside us. It's about seeing the world not as fragmented, but as alive with meaning, relationship, and spiritual presence. In this video, we're not just exploring rituals or deities. We're digging into the very essence of what it means to be spiritually African. You'll learn how these systems view life, death, purpose, and connection, and why, today more than ever, rediscovering this sacred knowledge isn't just important, it's revolutionary. When most people think of spirituality, they imagine temples, holy books, and formal doctrines. But in Africa, spirituality isn't confined to buildings or bound by written words. It's embedded in the land, the people, the ancestors, the sky, and even the everyday. It breathes in the rhythm of the drum, the rustle of the trees, and the stories whispered from elders to children around flickering fires. African spirituality is not a singular religion. It's a constellation of systems, diverse, local, yet universally connected through shared principles of life, harmony, and respect for the unseen. Across the continent, spiritual practices are as varied as the languages spoken. In West Africa, the Yoruba people consult the Ifa oracle, a complex and ancient system of divination believed to connect humans directly with the divine mind of Orunmila. In the Congo Basin, the Bakongo understand life as a spiritual journey shaped by powerful forces like the Kalunga line, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors. The Zulu speak of Unkulunkulu, the first being, and honor ancestors through rituals that blend song, sacrifice, and memory. Among the Dinka of South Sudan, spiritual life revolves around Nayalik, a sky deity, and the rituals performed by cattle-keeping priest kings. Despite their differences, these spiritual traditions share key themes: reverence for nature, ancestral veneration, and the belief that the spiritual world is not separate from the physical. It is interwoven with it. Rain is not just weather, it is a blessing. A tree is not just wood, it's a being. Illness may be physical, but its root could be spiritual. Every element of life is sacred and connected to a deeper spiritual rhythm that transcends human understanding. One of the most remarkable aspects of African spirituality is its oral nature. Knowledge isn't stored in books. It lives in proverbs, rituals, songs, and communal memory. Spirituality is experienced, performed, and passed down. It adapts without losing its essence. This oral transmission allowed these systems to survive enslavement, colonization, and the violent onslaught of Western religious conversion. Even when people were stolen from their homelands, the spirit of their beliefs traveled with them, hidden in songs, disguised in Christian saints, reimagined in the Caribbean and the Americas. There is no one way to be spiritually African, because these systems evolved based on geography, language, and community needs. But what unites them is a worldview that honors life in all its forms and recognizes that to live well, one must live in balance, not just with other humans, but with spirits, ancestors, animals, and nature itself. In African spirituality, everything has spirit, everything has meaning, everything is connected. To understand African spirituality is to shift your perception of reality itself. At its core lies a cosmology that sees the world not as divided into sacred and secular, but as an ongoing conversation between the visible and the invisible. Life doesn't begin at birth or end at death. It is a continuous cycle, a dance between realms, guided by purpose and protected by ancestors. Most African spiritual systems recognize a supreme creator, an all-encompassing force that breathes life into existence, but remains distant, transcendent. The Yoruba speak of Olodumare, the source of all energy. The Fon people honor Mawulisa, the dual god of creation, both male and female. In Akan cosmology, there is Niamey, the sky god, radiant and beyond human comprehension. This supreme being is not worshipped in the same way as gods in Western monotheistic religions. Instead, the focus is on the intermediaries, deities, spirits, and ancestors, who are more accessible, more involved in daily life, and who embody aspects of the divine. These spiritual intermediaries, often called orishas, a bosom, or Ninkisi depending on the tradition, govern everything from rivers to war, love to wisdom. They are not just symbols, they are living energies that exist within and around us. One might turn to Ogun, the spirit of iron and technology, when beginning a new endeavor, or to Oshun, goddess of rivers and fertility, when seeking love or healing. These spirits are not separate from nature, they are nature. And through ritual, sacrifice, and prayer, humans maintain a sacred relationship with them. Perhaps most profound is the central role of the ancestors. In African cosmology, death is not the end. The dead become more powerful in the spiritual realm and continue to influence the living. Ancestors are honored, consulted, and cared for. They are guardians of families and communities, acting as spiritual intermediaries who bridge the gap between the human world and the divine. This veneration isn't worship, it's kinship. It's about acknowledging that we are never alone and that the wisdom of those who came before still guides us. Destiny, too, is an important belief. Many African traditions teach that each soul comes into the world with a purpose, a divine mission. Life is the unfolding of that destiny. Through divination, rituals, and spiritual mentorship, individuals seek alignment with their higher path. Misfortunes are not always seen as random. They might indicate a misalignment with one's spiritual duties or a call from the ancestors to pay attention. Balance and harmony are not just ideals, they are spiritual imperatives. Illness, conflict, and misfortune are often understood as signs that something is out of sync in the web of relationships between people, spirits, and nature. Healing isn't just about medicine, it's about restoring balance through rituals, offerings, and spiritual realignment. This cosmology is vast, nuanced, and deeply human. It speaks not to abstract doctrines, but to lived experience. It's a system where the divine is near, where every river whispers secrets, every ancestor watches with love, and every moment holds sacred potential. It is not just a belief, it is a way of being in the world. Ritual is the heartbeat of African spirituality. It is the bridge between the seen and unseen, a coded language that speaks directly to the spirits. In African cosmologies, rituals are not optional. They are essential. They mark life's passages, heal the wounded, protect communities, and renew the bonds between humans, nature, and the divine. Every ritual, whether grand or simple, is a spiritual transaction, a sacred conversation with forces beyond the material world. Initiation is one of the most profound rituals found across African traditions. It is the moment when a person is formally introduced into the spiritual lineage, often after intense preparation and testing. This rite is not just symbolic, it's transformative. It marks the death of the old self and the birth of a new spiritual identity. Among the Yoruba, initiation into Ifa brings a devotee under the guidance of Orunmila, the deity of wisdom and divination. In the Bwiti tradition of Gabon, initiation involves deep communion with the spirit world through the sacred use of iboga, a powerful entheogen. Divination is another core practice, an art form of listening to the unseen. Through tools like cowrie shells, kola nuts, bones, or sacred boards, diviners become interpreters of spiritual messages. They do not predict the future in the Western sense, but rather reveal the energies at play and the paths one might take. It is through divination that people receive guidance from ancestors and spirits, uncover the causes of misfortunes, and discover their life's purpose. Symbols and sacred objects also carry deep spiritual power. Masks are not mere decorations. They are living embodiments of spirits during ceremonies. They allow the wearer to become a vessel for divine presence. Nkisi, sacred containers used by the Congo people, are believed to house spirits and are activated through specific rituals. Staffs, beads, stones, and sculptures are not inert. They are repositories of spiritual force, maintained and honored through ritual practice. Music, dance, and drumming are not entertainment. They are spiritual technologies. They open portals. The rhythm of the drum aligns the body with cosmic time, calling forth spirits to join the ceremony. Chanting is used to invoke, to remember, to awaken. Dance becomes a form of prayer, a way of becoming the deity one is invoking. In some traditions, possession takes place, where a spirit enters the body of a devotee to offer healing, messages, or blessings. Sacred spaces vary. Some are groves deep in the forest. Others are rooms within homes. What defines them is not architecture, but energy. These spaces are often marked by altars where offerings of food, drink, smoke, or symbolic items are made. These are not gifts. They are exchanges, affirmations of relationship, and acts of spiritual maintenance. The altar becomes a site of dialogue between the human and the divine. Through these rituals and symbols, African spirituality becomes visible, tangible, and participatory. It's not about belief alone. It's about doing, embodying, maintaining, and remembering. The rituals aren't frozen in time. They are living traditions, adapting yet rooted in deep ancestral wisdom. They remind us that the spiritual life is not separate from the ordinary. It infuses everything, and in honoring it, we realign ourselves with the sacred order of the universe. When colonial ships landed on African shores, they didn't just bring guns and flags. They brought new gods. And with them came an unrelenting mission to dominate not only land and labor, but also spirit. Colonialism wasn't satisfied with controlling people physically. It sought to rewrite their cosmologies, to crush the spiritual systems that gave them meaning, power, and identity. The colonizers knew that to truly conquer a people, you had to sever their connection to the divine that looked like them, spoke their language, and lived in their rituals. Christian missionaries marched alongside soldiers, building churches beside broken shrines, calling drums demonic and labeling ancestral veneration as idolatry. They replaced orishas with saints, altars with pews, and rituals with sermons. African spirituality was recast as superstition, something to be feared, mocked, or forgotten. In some places, practicing traditional spirituality became illegal. Masks were burned, sacred groves were desecrated, and those who continued the old ways were shamed or punished. Entire generations grew up believing their ancestors were heathens, and that salvation required abandoning their roots. But the spiritual systems of Africa are resilient. They did not vanish. They evolved, adapted, and hid in plain sight. In Brazil, enslaved Africans disguised their deities as Catholic saints and gave birth to candomblé. In Cuba, Santeria became a living archive of Yoruba cosmology. In Haiti, Vodou kept the drums beating and the spirits present. Even within Christianity, echoes of African spirituality persisted in the call and response of gospel music, in the rhythm of Black Pentecostal worship, in the quiet rituals performed behind closed doors. Still, the damage was deep. Colonization planted seeds of shame, suspicion, and disconnection. It taught generations to look outward for divinity, to distrust their own traditions, and to see the spiritual wisdom of their ancestors as something backwards or evil. This wasn't just a spiritual loss, it was a cultural wound, a tearing of the thread that connected communities to their origins and to each other. And yet, something remained, a memory, a pull, a whisper in the bones. Even in the diaspora, even after centuries of displacement, the longing to return to something ancient, something powerful, something true, never died. And today, that whisper is growing louder. Across the globe, people of African descent are waking up to the richness of the spiritual legacies that survived oceans, chains, and empires. They are asking questions, lighting candles, beating drums, and listening, once again, to the spirits that never stopped speaking. A quiet revolution is unfolding, not in the halls of power or on the pages of textbooks, but in hearts, homes, and healing circles around the world. After centuries of suppression and distortion, African spirituality is experiencing a resurgence. It is not emerging as something new, but as something remembered. From New York to Lagos, from Johannesburg to Kingston, people of African descent are reaching back through the veil of time, reconnecting with the spiritual wisdom that colonialism tried to erase. This awakening is more than a trend. It's a reclamation. For many, this journey begins with a deep, aching sense that something is missing, that mainstream religion, while meaningful, doesn't fully speak to the ancestral soul, that the sacred must feel more personal, more embodied, more rooted in one's own story, and so they begin to explore. They light a candle for their grandmother. They ask questions about the spirits their elders once whispered about. They find community in traditional healing spaces, online forums, books, and ancestral rituals revived across the diaspora. This resurgence is as much about identity as it is about faith. African spirituality offers a mirror where Black people can see themselves, not as sinners, not as broken, but as divine. It affirms the sacredness of Blackness, of the body, of culture, of the earth. It offers practices of liberation, spiritually, psychologically, and politically. By embracing these ancestral traditions, people are not only healing from generational trauma, they are rewriting their narratives with dignity, power, and purpose. the movement is also gaining visibility. Scholars, artists, and spiritual leaders are bringing African spiritual knowledge into the public sphere through books, films, music, and cultural festivals. Orishas appear in poetry, altars sit in urban apartments, indigenous names are reclaimed. Even in academic institutions where African spirituality was once dismissed, new research is uncovering its philosophical depth, ecological wisdom, and global relevance. But this awakening is not about copying rituals or exoticizing traditions. It is a sacred responsibility. Reconnecting with African spirituality requires humility, study, guidance, and community. It's not about abandoning one's current beliefs, but about honoring the stories that live in one's blood. It's about asking, who were my ancestors? What did they believe? And what truths have I forgotten that now call me home? As this global awakening continues to rise, it offers a powerful reminder. African spirituality was never dead. It waited patiently, quietly, like roots beneath the soil. And now those roots are blossoming into something radiant and unshakable. A spiritual renaissance that is as ancient as it is new. African spirituality is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force. It is the rhythm in the drumbeat, the wisdom in the proverb, the whisper of the ancestor in a dream. It is complex, diverse, and infinitely sacred, from the forests of the Congo to the coasts of West Africa, from the rituals of Vodun to the sacred geometry of Ifa. These systems offer more than religious beliefs. They offer a way of being that is deeply human, deeply divine, and deeply interconnected. To understand African spirituality is to see the world through a different lens, where the earth is alive, where the spirits of our forebears walk beside us, and where healing doesn't just treat the body but restores the soul. It is to remember that we are not alone, that we belong to something greater, and that our stories didn't begin with colonization or end in exile. The resurgence of these traditions today is not just a spiritual movement, it is an act of liberation. It is a way of reclaiming truth, dignity, and direction. It is a way of honoring the sacred intelligence of those who came before us and carrying it forward with courage. Whether you're returning to the practices of your ancestors or encountering them for the first time, you're stepping into a lineage of profound wisdom and unbreakable spirit. This isn't just about faith, it's about identity, it's about home. And in reconnecting with these sacred paths, we not only transform ourselves, we heal generations. If this journey has touched something in you, if it's opened a door or sparked a question, I invite you to go deeper, read more, listen more, ask your elders, honor your intuition. And if you found value in this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with others on this path of remembrance. The ancestors are listening, and they're waiting for us to remember.